Welcome. Today I'm going to discuss the flat earth scam and why it works. In Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, Spock's brother was in search of God, and he wanted to meet him. At the moment when he thought he was doing just that, the entire sham was uncovered when James T. Kirk asked the simple question, "What does God need with a starship?" Originally, the powerful being said he needed a starship in order to achieve his goals and make everything wonderful in the galaxy. But then, Kirk asked the simple question. And of course, because of that, the wheels came completely off. To answer the question would undermine the entire charade. The being, of course, used the Nathan Oakley approach by trying to shut the opposition up, but rather than using a mute button and a loud voice to silence the question, the being used violence. In any case, the question ended the farce. There are many such questions that have been asked by the ones who debunked the flat earth claims. Professor Dave did a great job in his response to Globebusters, "The Earth Still Isn't Flat" video, and I will put a link in the description to that. If you have an open mind and any remaining doubts on this topic, I highly recommend that you watch it. You can ask any number of scam-busting questions that would shatter the illusion of a flat earth if you were dealing with someone who is intelligent and who truly seeks truth. For example, you might ask, why do tropical storms rotate in a counterclockwise direction in the northern hemisphere, but clockwise in the southern hemisphere, no matter what time of year it is? This is a showstopper if you think about it logically and honestly. There are many other such questions. But what I want to discuss here is the method behind the growth of acceptance of the absurd flat earth idea. The flat earth community falls into two camps: the dishonest, where most of the leaders find their ethically challenged selves, and the deluded, where all the true believers end up. From the outside looking inward, it is very difficult to tell which camp some individuals fall into. For example, Nathan Roberts appears to have used his book of fables to convince himself that the earth is flat. I believe because it's in the book. Mark Sargent shows his ignorance of science in his speeches to his crowds of followers when he makes basic mistakes like confusing exponents with the actual numbers he is trying to work with. He claims to believe that there is such a thing as a negative measured value for Tor, for example, which is ludicrously wrong. Perhaps the most upsetting to me personally is the girl who calls herself Orphan Red, because she is suffering from what is very well described in the book The Curse of the High IQ by Aaron Clarey. Orphan Red knows she is lying, but she continues on with her act of being a dance hall bimbo with a drink in hand, describing her Mensa entrance score. She claims to have an IQ of over 140, and I think that is likely true. She shows her understanding in brief glimpses of things like her ridicule of quantum physics. She has given up a pursuit of truth in order to pursue her dream of acting, fame, and of course, money. Nathan Oakley appears to know he is lying because of his approach to discussing flat earth questions on his show. He rides his mute button like a jockey rides a horse, and he quickly goes into vile name-calling and screaming at his guests whenever they begin to make a point. Rather than discussing the actual point, he finds some side issue to go after in anger to deflect the question. Just as a starting point, the quickest way to spot a group who is promoting a scam is to see that they spend nearly all of their time attacking an opposing model or theory, and very little time establishing a clear picture and the veracity of their own model or theory. If you take a physics course, they don't even mention the flat earth nonsense, but instead focus on the data and things that show the shape of the earth from observation and testing. The flat earth crowd, however, spend nearly all their time attacking both the globe model and those who have established its validity, and very little time providing a working model and evidence that their working model is useful in prediction and explanation. The flat earthers patch up their theories with layer upon layer of ad hoc assertions which have no supporting evidence, but they hope will cover up one or more of its glaring flaws. In the 1950s, when I began grade school, the majority of the world's geologists rejected the idea of plate tectonics. By the time I reached high school, the theory had been accepted. Why? Because it could explain things and make predictions better than what was here before. The earth hadn't simply hardened and dried up like an old orange, creating mountains and ocean basins. Rather, the earth is dynamic and the continents move around. This theory explains most earthquakes, volcanoes, and mountains in the world. It was the quality of being more useful at understanding the world that allowed plate tectonics to rise to the level of being accepted as a working model. Contrast this with the flat Earth attempts to provide a model. There are various mutually exclusive models out there. They all have holes and huge gaps, and none of them provide one valid and useful prediction about the universe we see around us that isn't explained at least as well and almost universally better by a globe model. Anyone with a normal IQ or higher can easily show this for himself with just a bit of digging into the data. So, we have the leaders who most likely know they are lying, coaxing people into the delusion that the whole world is living under a massive conspiracy to lie to them about the shape of the earth. They use tricks to avoid a straight answer to questions that would turn their lucrative Apple Card over. To avoid facing something that would show how wrong they are, they will dump a load of silly nonsense into the discussion, deflecting unanswerable questions or changing the topic, perhaps even yelling at you and calling you filthy names. But the fact is, in view of this tirade, their scam is already exposed to anyone who is paying attention. They have a name for this sort of person, who is highly intelligent, but who is ethically challenged to the point of using his gifted brain to promote a lie to people who are not so bright. We call him a confidence man, or con man for short. The name comes from the action of someone using his intellect to work into the good graces of his intended victim to gain confidence and trust. Once the con man has your complete trust, he then moves on to pick your pocket by selling you something that either has no real value or which he has no right to sell. A common example is the cliché of a con man selling the Brooklyn Bridge to a sucker. And remember, when a con man is working you this way, he views you as exactly that, a sucker. This leads you to a very important rule of life. Never make important decisions based solely on trust in an individual. Trust can be fabricated by a con man because he is good at doing just that. Remember that any proposition can be made to look reasonable if you allow someone else to set the starting premises. Let's create a hypothetical example, which is as silly as the flat earth proposition. A con man wants to convince you to vote for a law that will incarcerate some group of people, say people with green eyes. He is smart enough to do searches and find a long list of people with green eyes. He then goes through the list and selects only the worst people on the list, the rapists, the murderers, the thieves, and drug dealers. He, of course, leaves off the scientists, the healthcare providers, the engineers, and the teachers who have green eyes. He then finds a not very bright person and shows him the list and goes into a tirade about how terrible it is that we let such people walk around. Look at them, they do horrible things. Whenever someone who knows better tries to reason with the con man or his dupe, he meets only anger and yelling. The con man pushes the fabricated list at the naysayer and doesn't give him a chance to point out that it is a flawed and useless list. The poor dupe is impressed with the emotional reaction by the con man and assumes that anyone who is so sure of his position that he can yell and jump up and down in support of his assertions must really believe them to be true. Naturally, the dupe could figure it out for himself if he were smart enough and interested enough to look up the facts. But instead, what we see in the flat earth community is that people feel superior because they believe they have the truth, just like a dupe thinking he is better because he doesn't have green eyes like the people on the con man's list. It really doesn't matter how stupid an idea is. If someone who is much smarter than the dupe sets about building a case for the idea, he can make it sound reasonable. No idea is too stupid to be excluded from this process, even the flat earth. The con man takes an uneducated person, often with a lower IQ, who can't fact-check the lies, and wins this poor dupe's trust. Whether it is the lie that green-eyed people are evil, or the earth is flat, or that the Brooklyn Bridge is available at a bargain basement price really doesn't matter. The process is the same. A con man could be selling an idea, a phony invention, a non-functioning car, or an item he doesn't even own. The specifics are irrelevant. It is the process that is consistent. He gains your trust, and then he slips you his scam. The con man will be intelligent, and he will sound smart and reasonable. He has polished up his aura of believability. He may well sound like your best friend who simply wants to make your life better. He enthusiastically attacks the bad people who want to keep you from his offered treasure. One of the signs to watch for in a con man is his ability to cast doubt on others. He sells the idea that any point of view other than the one he is pushing at you is either created from ignorance or is an evil conspiracy by them to keep everyone ignorant of the secret information he is selling you. In other words, he uses negative evidence. It is common in the world of sales for a presentation to start with why something you are doing now is bad, ineffective, or harmful, and you really need an alternative. The more time a salesman spends on talking about the failings of what is there now, and the less time he spends on clearly and openly describing his product and how it works, the more likely it is that he is lying to you and trying to push something on you that is no good. If it were good, he would spend his time showing you how wonderful his product is. Now think about the flat earth promoters. How much of their time do they spend trying to convince you that you are being lied to? And how many things are wrong with the globe earth model? How often do they try to cast ridicule and disdain upon those who disagree with them, rather than putting forward a solid working model of the flat earth? Do you see a trend? They work hard to debunk the model that clearly works, rather than fleshing out a valid model for their own concept which would stand up to scrutiny. Why? Because they are selling lies, and the one thing that liars hate virulently is the truth. When somebody comes at you from a place of anger and ridicule, rather than a place of reason and dignity, you know you are dealing with someone who is almost certainly misled or is attempting to mislead. Emotional outbursts hide facts and valid reasoning. They are camouflage used to hide deceit. One flat earth promoter who is clearly working a con is the one who calls herself Orphan Red. I'll put a link in the description to a video of hers where she claims to have been accepted into Mensa based upon her test results, and that her IQ is in the top 1%, which moves her IQ up to 135 or higher. She says above 140 in the video. Taking her at her face value, you then must accept the fact that if she applied her mind to this task, she would find that what she is saying is utter nonsense. It doesn't take long watching one of her videos to see that she is selling her breast cleavage while promoting an air of being a complete airhead bimbo with her phony moronic grin and idiotic and perpetual giggling. Anyone with average intelligence or above would find her act to be intolerable. It appears that she wants to keep smart people away and to speak only to her more than 7,000 ignorant followers. If you compare Professor Dave's video with Orphan Red's video, you can see which of the two of them is serious about science and establishing what is true about the shape of the earth. What Orphan Red is saying in that video is, I'm smart, so what I say must be true. However, this proposition is absurd on the face of it. Many con men are smart and are all too happy to lie to you in order to further their aims. That is, apparently, the category of person that Orphan Red has chosen to be. In the book, The Curse of the High IQ, Aaron Clarey shows how many people with high IQs are very good in business and can become wealthy with lots of toys and social rewards in abundance. Meanwhile, they are miserable and end up using alcohol, drugs, or even suicide to drown out the pain of being dissatisfied with life. Let's follow this possible path through for Orphan Red, using her assertion that her IQ is 140 or more. After quickly listing off some troubling and very serious problems many who have an abnormally high IQ share, Clarey moved immediately into quantifying where an intelligent person lies on the spectrum of humans. Most very intelligent people grow up feeling abnormal because they don't fit in with the rest of the people. They feel different outside of the group. You start this quantifying process by getting your IQ number. We have Orphan Red's at 140. If that is true, she has spent her entire life feeling outside of the mainstream, and we will see why shortly. By subtracting 100 from your IQ score, you find how far away you are from the mean IQ of people in American society. The IQ bell curve has the mean set at 100. With the difference in hand of 40, you then divide that by the standard deviation of 15. You find that 68% of society falls within one standard deviation, or plus or minus 15, from the mean IQ. In other words, the IQs of 68% of all people in the USA will fall between 85 and 115, or one standard deviation of 15. For our project, we will divide the difference of 40 by 15, giving us the number of standard deviations Orphan Red's IQ is above the mean, and that gives us 2.667. As it turns out, 95% of the population falls within 2 standard deviations of the mean, or in an IQ range of 70 to 130. But Orphan Red is even outside of that huge group and is setting at 2 2/3 above the mean. I will place a link in the description for where you can locate a z-score table to identify what a 2.667 deviation means. When you look it up, you will find that 2.667 puts you in around 0.99617. Or in other words, 99.6% of the population has a lower IQ than you do. Your IQ is in the top 0.4% of society. This tells you that in a random group of 100 people, it is very likely that you will be the most intelligent one in the room. If you are in a larger group of 1,000 people, you may be part of a group of 4 people who are smarter than everyone else in the room. If you have a YouTube channel with 7,000 people who swallow your lines sufficiently to subscribe, you are almost certainly going to be smarter than those to whom you are talking. With an IQ of 140, it is very easy to find 7 or even 70,000 people with lower IQs than your own. On the downside, the book pointed out that the average IQ for teachers in the USA is 103. If you go to school with an IQ of 140 or above, you will usually be smarter than your teacher, and often much smarter. It is a very troubling experience. You get bored. You can't relate to the mundane routine, and you might check out completely for a time. Usually, by high school, you find your feet, but you can spend many of your formative years feeling like a freak. It isn't fun. You might even develop anger at the herd that abused you and treated you like a nerd or geek all those years. It is even possible that you will reach a point of taking joy in making them look stupid and letting them send you money while you laugh at them off camera for being so dumb. Finding other people who are as smart as you are can be troubling. You may find yourself all alone and frustrated. It happens to many gifted people. If you go the other way, a sigma of minus 2.667, it would put your IQ so low that you would be at the very least in need of assistance to live your life, and you might be institutionalized. Visualize how an average person with an IQ of 100 would feel trying to talk to and learn from someone who is older but who has an IQ of 60 or 70. It would be frustrating and often would feel like a complete waste of time. That is how a person with an IQ of 140 feels attending a public school. You are being taught by idiots who don't have a clue about what you are thinking. If you have an IQ in this range and you read that book, you might find yourself deep in a funk as you go along because you have lived the life and now you are shown why things went the way they did. Are you all alone? Do people think you are weird? Well, you are weird. Look at this graph that shows it. You can create your own graph with your own IQ by going to mathcracker.com, and I will put a link in the description. Once you go there to the normal probability calculator, you simply have to put in 100 in the little window marked mean and 15 in the window marked standard deviation, and then click on the radio button beside the right-tailed label and insert your IQ in the window beside that. You will need to scroll down past an ad to reach the yellow calculate button. Push calculate and your part is done. You only need to scroll down the page. You will see some calculations and there will be your Z sigma value, in this case our 2.667 for Orphan Red, and then a fractional representation of where you fall out in the population. Scroll down a bit farther and you see a graph that colors in with red all of the curve to the right of your IQ number, showing the group of people in the general population whose IQ fall higher than yours. But what is important for this discussion is all the people to the left, under the curve in white, who have an IQ lower than 140. For an evil genius, this is a field of dreams, a whole population of potential suckers. If you work at it, you can reason circles around most of them. You can create logically sounding arguments that can convince a large number of these people that your lies are truth. Unless they are bolstered by knowledge or by knowing someone as smart as you are to help them see through what you're doing, you can have a field day selling whatever fertilizer you want to push. including a flat earth. One of the nice things about this particular racket is that, other than taking their money under false pretenses in order to support your channel, it doesn't really hurt anyone. They probably won't use the lies you are selling them for anything destructive. They won't die or harm themselves because they are deluded, and so you go your merry way, laughing all the way to the bank. One section of Clary's book is entitled, "This World is Not Meant for You." That is what you face when you have a very high IQ. This world is built for the majority of people. The school system is made to handle those with IQs around 100, which is, of course, most of the people. Most popular fiction is written for the masses. Most jobs are structured for the average Joe to handle. This can make a very intelligent person feel like he is living on an alien planet. You won't really fit in, ever. You can draw attacks from those who feel threatened by you. A boss may see that you are better than he is and will try to sabotage you. Co-workers might try and undermine you to keep you from advancement. Just like the kids who hated you in school for being too smart, co-workers who have dressed up their act as they became adults still will look at you the same way. Gary Larson has retired. He is 1 year older than I am, for goodness sake. But he is a genius, and his Far Side cartoons are classics. He showed up how the society deals with smart people in a cartoon that had a picture of a young boy who is at the top of the steps beside a sign that reads Midvale School for the Gifted, and on the door is a large sign that says, "Pull." This high IQ student is holding his books in one hand and leaning over as he pushes with all his might against the door with the other. The reason this was so popular with the masses is because it helped them to discount those who have abnormally high IQs. It made those who are normal feel superior. If Larson had shown a bubble with what was going on inside that child's mind, perhaps an advanced equation or a philosophical idea he was wrestling with, it would have ruined the image for the masses, because they would have felt inadequate rather than superior. When you are thinking deep thoughts, you might be disconnected and absent-minded for the mundane things, the routine things that others take for granted. This type of reaction from others is part of life for those who are outside of the 1 Sigma group, and even worse for those outside of the 1 and 2 Sigma groups. I don't know how many of the Flat Earth leaders are like Orphan Red, who are putting on an act for those with the relative intellect of a child. Are they simply seeing the money flowing in, and that keeps them going? Are they getting a bit of their own back from all those years of abuse from the normal kids in school? Whatever is driving the ones who know they are lying, somehow they have convinced themselves that fooling less intelligent people for profit is good, clean fun. For the ones who have been deceived and truly believe that the world is flat because some old book told them so, I only have pity. For the liars, I feel disgust. Shame on them. Shame on them all. If you enjoyed the video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you click on the bell, you will also receive notifications when I put up a new video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.